Bad news for the UK. Numbers released on Thursday indicate the economy shrank more than initially thought, with a revision to GDP posting a 0.3% quarter-on-quarter decline. The drop was driven by poor performance of the construction sector, which contracted by 4.8%. Whilst exports fared slightly better, they increased by 0.1%. This news will add weight to the argument the Bank of England should embark on a fresh round of bond purchases. Andrew Johnson is the Senior Economist at EEF, a manufacturers organisation, and he joins me now. Andrew, in your opinion, what has triggered this fall in GDP, and do you expect to see this continue into the next quarter?
I think the major reason for today's deterioration in the estimate for first quarter GDP comes from weakness in the construction sector, which was probably something people were aware of before the formal release today, given what was coming out of the construction sector. As far as the implications for what that means for the rest of the year go, I think it's fair to say we are in a renewed period of uncertainty given what's happening in some of our major markets in Europe. And I think that has particular relevance for our sector, manufacturing, where we have so many of our exports destined for those markets.
Do you expect the suggested quantitative easing will go ahead? And what effect will you expect this to have on the UK manufacturing sector?
Well, the case for looser monetary policy is being talked about a little bit more frequently at the moment, given the weakness in the UK economy. Estimates from the Bank of England suggest that QE has had some important impact in the past in terms of supporting growth. But whether it's the right time to introduce more QE, I think, is a very finely balanced judgment, given that we have had a prolonged period of shrinking real wages, that is, prices growing faster than wages, which is a major drag on consumption, which in turn holds back growth. So I think it is a very fine judgment about whether the case for more QE is warranted at this point.
A poll out this week of industry and the public commissioned by the Institute of Mechanical Engineers suggests the majority of manufacturers are unhappy with government policies. In your opinion, can the UK government actually do anything in this situation, given that the domestic and external demand remains weak?
Well, I think we've had a situation for quite a while now where weaker European markets have been impacting on manufacturers, and that's not surprising because, as you say, they are 50% of their markets. But what manufacturers are doing, I think, increasingly is looking beyond Europe to growth opportunities, whether that's in emerging markets in Asia or, in fact, in the United States, which is seeing a little bit more strength, and even in some not necessarily classic brick economy emerging markets, but places like Vietnam or even the Middle East, where we see a bit more demand growth than our traditional markets. I think the ongoing uncertainty about how the Eurozone issue is going to be resolved isn't helpful, because obviously customers, when they see an uncertain environment ahead of them, start to think, is now the best time for us to place a big order? And that's actually customers not just in Europe but also outside of European markets. And we saw that impact, for example, at the end of last year when there was a lot of trouble in Greece and Italy around about October time last year. So that now we're seeing a new intensification of the crisis. I think that is a danger that some of those more general confidence impacts start to have effect in markets beyond Europe.
Given the Eurozone is the UK's key export destination, do you expect the turbulence there to continue to drag on exports?
I think the government can't do anything about what's happening in Europe as such, but it can have a much clearer vision of where it sees government policy supporting growth. So, we would say that the government's done a good job of being very clear on what it's doing fiscally. It's set out the fiscal mandate. It's aiming to get rid of the structural deficit over the 5-year rolling forecast horizon. What it hasn't done is set out a similar vision on the growth side about where it sees the economy going. And we would see a vision on the growth side focused very much on rebalancing the economy towards a greater reliance on business investment and net trade driving growth. And therefore that those sort of ideas should be implanted right across Whitehall in terms of any decision that is being made with some sort of economic relevance. And we don't yet see that kind of cross-government thinking in terms of growth. We've got it on the fiscal side but not on the growth side, so I think there's much more to do there.
Lastly, data out this week shows UK exports are up 0.1%. What has caused this rise, and do you expect this trend to continue?
Okay, I'm not sure it was unexpected because I think we've had a really strong run with exports ever since the financial crisis, very strong growth in exports. I think some of the issue has been that we've also seen pretty strong growth in imports. So, for example, the net trade balance in the first quarter of this year has been down from the net trade balance in the last quarter of last year, which means the overall contribution from net trade is negative. But the export side of things is going very strongly, and in particular the exports to non-EU markets have hit record highs again in the latest export statistics, and that's a very positive thing because those parts of the world are still growing very strongly, and UK manufacturers continue to take advantage of those markets as an alternative to some of the weakness we're seeing in both home markets and the more traditional EU export markets.
Andrew, thank you for speaking with me today. There is plenty to check out on Dukas Copy TV, so make sure to check back soon. But for now, goodbye.